no response. All right, so we'll just get started here. I think this hopefully will just be, one, it'll give you guys a little bit of some guidelines into in general principles about doing interviews. This is mostly made by Todd. I just did a couple of edits. So yeah, like I said, guiding principles, things that you should, kind of, black and white, do and don't do. And then of course there's always a lot of gray in the middle that, we just can't necessarily predict. A few example questions. So I personally, and Todd, of course, also did not do any virtual. Oh, well, Todd did some for his fellowships, but not for residency. I personally did not do any virtual interviewing, and it sounds like this year they're going to be getting away from it for the most part for fellowships. So I probably, somehow was in that kind of donut hole of COVID and may never have that experience, or that may be the minority of my interviewing experience. We'll talk about a few example questions and then we can chat. So this is this year's version of the timeline. Obviously we've passed October. A lot of you guys have probably already, are through most, if not all of your aways and are getting into your interviewing any day now. You probably already received all the requests and you're probably going to start going on some probably by into December and January. Excuse me. And then by February is when the match period, so the shortest month of the year, you have 28 days to make your list. And February 28th is when it closes. And so you should submit your list. And once you have registered for the rank, the NRMP and all that stuff, then you're also registered for SILK, which is something we'll talk about another time. And then of course there's the week leading up to match, and that's when you kind of figure out, you match or not. So in some people's mind, the March 11th day is the most important day, and then everything to follow. Once that the pressure is on or off, depending on where you land. So in general, and you'll hear this over and over and over and over and over and over again, but be yourself. I think it's really hard to kind of pretend to be something you're not, especially if you're trying to do it. You're trying to do it to. There's on some level of there's a program that you're interested in and you're interested in for some reason, and maybe you're close but not perfectly congruent, and sometimes you try to change who you are or be a little bit different. But I think that can be there's a fine line between saying things that talking more about parts of your self that align with the program and just saying things that aren't you and not being who you are. You'd be surprised. You probably don't want to go somewhere where you have to kind of put up a facade for 4 or 5 years or be someone else, or go somewhere and that's something we thought you were, and then it's and then there's almost like a little bit of tension between you and the people there, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them. So probably better that you know what you're getting into and vice versa, and that you guys gel without any without it having to be forced. But don't do anything really weird. So I guess we'll at the end when we have Q&A, we can talk a little bit more about that. Don't lie, which is I think self-explanatory. Just say, again, it's like, think of it this way: if you say X and someone's really excited for you about X, but that's not really who you are or something you've done, you're gonna have to keep that up for the rest of your career almost, right? Because you're doing it for whatever, making up whatever thing you've made up, and then people are going to expect that you're going to have to keep that up. So it's probably better to, one, for that reason it's better to, and two, just it's just poor form and not tactful. So just kind of say, again, this falls back into be who you are. And then the third reason not to do it is if they do find out that you said something and it's just completely inaccurate, then they're just gonna be like, no, that's not who we want at our program. I don't know any program that would be like, oh, I can't believe they try to get away with that. That actually shows some ingenuity, and we'll take them. It's not going to happen. And again, there's a thin line between backing yourself. So you kind of have and exaggerating, all right, or making something bigger than it is. So there's on the one hand, right, you want to be humble, but you're also your only advocate. So you have to kind of like, these are my strengths, these are what I bring to the table, and these are good because X, Y, and Z. So you do have to, in some sense, advertise yourself, but you also don't want to, again, say what's more than there is. So this photo is courtesy of Todd. And then finally, know your application. So it's easy to it's easy to be yourself if you're going off of your own application and the things that you've done and you're honest about the things. So all of these things sort of come together. When I was interviewed, I mean, there was nothing, like, to the commas, I can tell you what the order that my which was probably maybe a little neurotic, but I made sure I knew everything that was on there. Nothing you could say to me about my application would surprise me, sorry. And I always made sure that I had any of the projects, and I think we'll get into it, but any projects that I did, I made, like, even at the time I just wrote out a little summary for each one and just had it and like knew, in general, like it doesn't have to be like down to the detail of the stats, but in general, kind of why we were doing it, what we found out, and what we, and what I learned from the process. Because in a lot of the cases for you guys, it's not you're not the lead author. You didn't come up with the idea. This isn't your groundbreaking thing, but a lot of the time, but you are involved in, and you can explain your involvement, and being able to understand what the project is about, not just being along for the ride, is very valuable. So, know your resume back and forth, and know everything that you've set them, because they can always say anything that you put on there is fair game for someone to ask about or to tangent off of or say that they did as well. As you get further and further along, you realize that your paths are, there's sort of the paths that kind of get into, orthopedics and into fellowship and so forth. They all are sort of congruent, right? Like, and they're sort of very similar. So anyone who, I talk a lot to some of a guy who's at Pittsburgh. He's a chief there. He went to UVA, and he sent me his resume, and it was like almost like identical. So like if he was interviewing me and I had stuff on there about things that I did at Virginia, like he's obviously going to ask about it, and if I don't know, it's going to look bad. So know your application. And then as far as academics are concerned, it's sort of sealed at this point. Everything you've done in terms of grades and clerkships and this and that it's done. If they're interviewing you, they probably think that you're academically sound enough to be interviewed, and so I wouldn't, if someone has anything negative to say or asks you about things that aren't necessarily the best part of your academic resume. Again, knowing your application, knowing where those holes are, knowing things that, knowing the reason why things happen. I wouldn't, necessarily make up excuses for, a bad grade or a bad, clerkship eval. But, I might, say you understand why that happened, or why this, individual had X, Y, or Z to say, and, or this is why, and if there's actual I was in the hospital the day before step and I couldn't move it, and I had to spend all night, because the family was there, and I was, barely awake when I took the exam, and it just didn't go the way I expected it to. Maybe that might be something to say. Like, for example, on my step 3 exam, one of the blocks just canceled, and it skipped, and I called people, and everyone was like, yeah, it canceled. You can either retake the test or accept this lower grade. And I was like, well, one, it's step 3, so I passed, so I'm not going to retake a 2-day, like 10-hour, like, don't be ridiculous. But someone asked, I was like, oh, your step 3 score was a MASH. Like, well, this is what happened. So and yes, it was very nerve-wracking at the time, but it turns out to be kind of a funny story now. That everything ended well. But again, talk about being ready to know if there are any areas that are concerning, being ready to talk about what you learn, and recognize, okay, hey, this is what happened. This is what I'll do to make sure something like that doesn't happen again, or this is what I've done. And subsequent to that clerkship, everything else has been stellar. And so showing that you're able to understand and make up for things that didn't necessarily go the way that you want to go. I didn't have AOA, so it'll be fine.
And I want to emphasize that your responses for this need to be premeditated. You need to have decided what you're going to say ahead of time. You can't just have an idea of how you would defend it and then kind of make it up on the spot. You don't want to be caught off guard and have to throw something together.
And I would also say, going off what Jomar was saying before too, I remember I got a question, like when you guys do research, I'm sure you sort of get put on a paper, and you may get put on from maybe someone you know that got you on a paper. But I've had a question before about an attending that I had never even met, and that attending and the person that asked me the question happened to have gone to school together, went to the same residency. So just looking people up and just know a little bit about maybe where they went or who they are, just in case someone asks you a question. You never know what may stand out to them.
There you go. Which, on the flip side to that, fortunately, people know that people get put on papers and have different roles. So again, being honest and not, if you've looked them up, great, because then you can say, oh, they're X, Y, and Z, or where this person's from, and you can kind of predict that. But if not, you can just say, you worked with them in a professional capacity on this paper, and you didn't really interact with them outside of that, So, yeah, be honest, but do your homework. Research. So again, that's been a big topic I've spoken about a lot, because it's probably something that it's easy to talk about on your application, and something that you may have in common with the people who are asking you questions. So like it says here, read all manuscripts like I did. I made sure I just had a way that I could, I wrote out a short summary, and made sure that I just, if you picked anything out of a hat, I could sort of quickly say, oh yeah, that was from this time. This is what we're doing. This is our goals. This is what I did on it. And then probably the next level, which I probably, didn't do, is maybe ask, what their interest is in a certain project, and why, is this something that they've done? And then identifying hot topics. That goes into what Paul was saying. If you're interviewing with, which sometimes you just don't know who you're interviewing with, but when I did know who I was interviewing with, I looked them up. I saw if if they were, what subspecialty they were in, if they were in hand and I'd done a hand paper, probably going to ask me about it. And so being able to maybe knowing a little bit more about the topic, or just being prepared for them to be in depth about it, and even looking up what they've studied. I remember sort of on the flip side of what happened to Paul is there was I don't know what happened to, but there was an attending who was interviewing me. I looked at some of their studies, and I was actually interested in one, but she was kind of like the background attending who was just kind of rubber stamping because she actually couldn't answer what I was asking about, which was kind of funny. But it happens to everyone, and she's like, oh, I guess it's a good paper, thanks. But yeah, knowing she wasn't being interviewed, so she didn't have to know her resume back and forth for that day. But it's nice. It's good if you do, and it's bad if you don't. So, yeah. Activities. Again, this is something that it's just, it's easy to oversell what you've done or what you like to do, or how often you do something. If you don't actually do something, like if you did something one time, it's probably not a hobby or an activity. Like I like to play flag football. I played in med school on our flag football league, and I play every year with the attending at Thanksgiving. But I never joined the flag football league that I was invited by one of the anesthesia residents to join. don't play flag football all the time, so it's not one of my hobbies. But I do like to do it, I guess, in the off chance that we are. But I do go like roller skating every few weekends, so I can do that. But so just just be real with yourself. It's probably the first test, and then you can honestly know if you can put something as an activity or not. And if you do, people are going to ask about it. And one of the things I do is I do like wire sculpture things. So I put that in, everybody asked about it, and everyone wanted to see a picture. And the first interview I didn't have any pictures because I just did, and then the second interview I took pictures of some of the stuff I made, and then everyone wanted to see it. So know what's on your application. So again, you see we kind of keep circling back to the be yourself, be honest, know what's on your application. Appearances, just like this almost this is almost a moot slide at this point. I guess in the era of virtual interviewing, maybe it can be a little bit different, but at this point, you wear a suit, wear a tie, and make sure it's ironed, cut your hair, or get a shape up, or whatever it is you do to be the most professional version of yourself. Do that. In shower, all those things. Just be ready for your interview. Virtually, again, I never did any, but probably helps just to get into the zone of interviewing, like doing it like you're going to be there in person, and then that way you can be just in that mode, in that professional, in that interview zone. One of the things that I think we end up talking about a little bit later, specifically about virtual interview, is just kind of the way that wearing pants and making sure that you're looking at the camera and so forth, and being the most professional version of yourself. So there's one there was one person that interviewed last year who I'm pretty sure he wasn't wearing pants. He said he was like 6'6". I was like, oh no way, stand up beside that door frame. He would not stand up. I'm like, this guy's naked. Anyway, so just be totally professional.
Going off what you're saying, sorry to cut you off there.
Yeah.
I had an interview where someone asked me to stand up, and you stood up, and then the camera didn't clear below my waist, and they literally made me take the camera and point it down and show that I had on pants. And it was supposed to be a funny question, but it was a question nonetheless. So it definitely it could happen to you.
Yeah.
I think that's abuse.
Yeah. Hey, show me below your waist, son.
It worked.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no, I don't care about your shirt. Show me anyway. Show me what's that. Okay, I'm done. Oh, we have something in the chat here. Do you need to have shoes on? For virtual interviews? I mean, Paul, or did they ask us?
They didn't make me go as far as the shoes, so I don't think that was the big takeaway, especially being indoors and being in your own home. But definitely wanted to see that you were fully dressed in a suit.
Yeah, so probably just keeping it mostly professional, although still comfortable in your home. Yeah, like if you don't wear shoes in your house, then don't wear shoes in your house. And then general advice. So stay positive. So I think that this is a big one, because people just want to see that you're able to you're just going to bring good energy to the program. You're not going to be like a downer and someone who's going to always be like attacking people and trying to bring people down. So if you can't do that on for like this 9-minute interview like 3 times in a row, when you're trying to be your best, then who knows what you'll be when you come in. So always see things in a positive light, have positive perspective on things. There's always a good way to spin things, and quite frankly, like in life, just like be positive and excited. It's much easier to be happy and pleasant. People like to help you more, and it's and personally I find it more fun. I like try to keep things light when I can, so staying positive. And then this one I think is good. I tried to highlight everything that I thought was good, but I didn't highlight it. But yeah, think of some things that can when I got this advice actually when I was interviewing from one of my classmates who was like, genius. He's the best. He's like an awesome person. And I'm not just saying this to like be positive. Like he's like a good dude. But yeah, you hate him. He's like genius. He's everything going for him, and he's like so nice. You're like, can't you just feel a little bit bad so I can hate you? But his advice was, hey man, like he came up with like 3 or 4 stories that could fill in any of those like little those answers or questions that we'll end up talking about that are common interview questions, and different ways that he could enter the story from each question. I was like, wow, that's really like prepared and thoughtful, and something that I certainly hadn't done till that point. So think of that. Do mock interviews is definitely an important one. Going into that school, I did mock interviews, and I thought that was really good. And then when you interview with someone, again, the same idea of being in the mode, being in the zone. Maybe wear a tie with that person or people. I used to, before interviews, I would call my dad, and he would or some interviews, I call my dad, and he would ask me a question or two that I was going into med school. Especially, he helped me a lot with that. He would just ask me questions about things, and I would go through the way I might answer it. And then again, avoiding sounding rehearsed. People want you to be polished. Like, don't come off the cuff. So nothing should be the first time you've said something. Everybody knows that you're interviewing a bunch. And in fact, everyone knows that you're trying to give your best self. So if you sound off the cuff and not like you're completely off guard, or you've never even thought of the way that you might discuss this part of your resume, that's also not good. So you don't want to sound like robotic with it, but you also don't want to be seeing it for the first time. So the sweet spot and practice gets you to that point. So as far as virtual interviews are concerned, so yeah, right, still wear full outfits. Again, I haven't done any, so we'll be really relying on Paul and Todd, who has done a couple. But make sure you don't have distractions. Maybe you want to do like, I don't know what the thoughts are on doing a Zoom thing where you have this blurred background. Maybe that's helpful, right? So keep the focus on you. Make sure that you have you're well lit. You have get your Ring camera if you want one. Get a new webcam, or if your computer's webcam is good, then you can use that. And try to make sure you're looking actually at the camera. Whereas I'm looking at a second screen right now, so it looks like I'm not paying attention to you or talking to you. But on the day of, if I was interviewing, have practiced looking directly into that little light in the camera to make sure that you're giving eye contact. You don't want to look down at the screen or the keyboard like right now, because then it looks like you're not talking to someone, even though you're looking at their face on the screen. You want to make sure you practice looking directly there.
I highly recommend getting a ring light. They're like $20 on Amazon, and it makes a surprisingly big difference.
Yeah, I mean, for some of us, not it can't really help, what we have going on, which can be taken both a good way and bad way. But a ring light's probably a good idea. And then making sure that everything works beforehand, mic check, and again, making sure if there's some reason that if you expect people to come by, lock your door so no one is coming by, or if you have kids, maybe find a way to make them not be there on that given Sunday or Saturday, or whenever they are. And then really make sure your Wi-Fi works, because you get like 9 minutes or 8 minutes usually for these interviews. They're typically not long. And so, your Wi-Fi cuts out, you're troubleshooting, and now you're, 5 minutes in and you haven't got any questions, and you're disheveled. So
everyone look at my video. Look how much better I look.
Yeah, but again, Todd, you're gonna look a lot better kind of no matter what we do. So that's easy to make it. So there you go, right? Practice with that stuff. All right, so now, oh yeah.
Just going along with that, I would also say it's nice when people have a photo, because you will have opportunities to turn off your camera when you go into like break rooms and stuff. And I do think it's, at least they know who you are if you have that background photo as opposed to just your name. and make sure that you read the like interview instruction manual, because some programs will say we want it to be formatted like your name, comma, your school, or your name and then your school in parentheses. So just make sure that you read those instructions the day or two before to set up your Zoom exactly how they want it.
Bam. That's why we have Paul here. And we like him. This portion now we're going into sort of interview questions. So these are just some things that, are you're just gonna get asked in some way, shape, or form. Probably the most common thing. Tell me about yourself. Oh, I have your resume here, but kind of walk me through, where you've been, what you've done, what are your goals. And I think that this answer is, or this question is, if someone asks you this, like, you should be like, oh, perfect. Like, you are now in control of, your narrative of the conversation. You get to set the direction. You get to say, essentially anything you want. The whole idea is you shouldn't ramble. So no one should be like, I don't think people should stop you. You should kind of get to where you're going. Or have like a story that's coherent, the way I usually do. I talk about where I am now. So you wouldn't say something obvious like, my name is, if someone asked me this, I say, well, I'm the 4 at Robert Wood Johnson out of New Jersey. You may say things about yourself. I'm 29, I'm married, I don't have any kids. Before, I was, in ortho, I grew up. You might talk about your background, where you come from. I grew up in Jamaica, small city, Pomona Heights. I did track and field and other sports as a kid and growing up, and I found myself in medicine, interested in medicine in college, and then I got into orthopedics because of X, Y, and Z, and then here I am now, and hopefully after sports fellowship, I want to blank, blank, blank. So you kind of build a story. So past or present, where you are now. Things that they may not already, readily know about you, things that contextualize you for the person, and then where you've been, and sort of walk your way up to how you got there, and then where you're going to end up going, or what your goals are, and then why, and then that's and really that's your jumping point. So if you're like a really academically oriented person and you want to work in academia or something, and you're at like a big research program, like your goals in 5 or 10 years are going to be geared towards that, and then they can really see, oh, this is the person I want to train because they are trying to do something that we can help them with, or that they can get out of our program. They're really going to be valuable to us, and they're also really going to value their experience here. So that's like, you should be chomping at the bit for someone to say this, because you are ready to answer it, and you're ready to like blow them out of the water with something that they know they're going to want to hear about you, that's true about you. Why orthopedics, right? So this is, time and time again, you're going to hear this. I think my one-liner for this was it's a very high impact specialty. So I think it's easy. Everyone understands that, okay, it's something that is that really changes people's lives. That's why I wanted to do orthopedics, and you can go into quickly why it is you wanted to do, why what do you mean by it's a high impact specialty? Well, musculoskeletal disease impacts people's everyday lives, their ability to do the things they like, to work, to put food on the table, and so forth. And so as a surgeon, you have the opportunity to make an intervention that can really change the lives of that can really change someone's life and change a lot of people's lives, because everyone has at some point or another a musculoskeletal. So again, all these questions, you should just be so happy that someone like is going to give you this chip shot, because you should be ready to knock it out of the park. Why our program, which is something you'll hear, which I think when I was interviewing for residency, you can tell when someone has done their research or not on a program, or someone has a real reason to be interviewing somewhere or not, like you were just on their list or not. And that's probably one of the big ways that they can see that. So whether it's the program itself, whether it's someone there, whether it's some research or that they do, whether it's it's a Big Ten program, you like Big Ten sports, and you really know you're going to go into sports, and you want it to be around that and have that experience. where'd you rotate, and why? I think, and why not here, probably. I think that it's people are gonna to ask this question probably more often where I got, where I rotated, but people often didn't care why, or why not here. I guess people just realize like, well, you can only do so many rotations, but they want to know why. Sometimes they'll ask why. And did you get these questions, Paul or Todd?
I would say the number one asked question that I guarantee will be on every interview you go to is tell me about yourself. Like that is 100% guarantee. I used to keep a little journal of like questions that I remembered or interesting questions that people asked so that I could try and prepare if I had never heard it before. That was asked on every single interview by everyone. And then I would say, if you have an interview that isn't in an area that you don't have anything on your application, so like I got an interview at a place in Florida. First thing they asked from one of the interviews was, why Florida? Why us? What do you like? Why would you come here? So I do think that having an answer for anything, like maybe there's, it's in a different geographic region, like why would you go there when everything else you've done in your life is not related to that place?
Yeah. I mean, these people can look at your application and know immediately that you just randomly applied to them. Like it's like for most of you you're at a state medical school, like a lot of you have spent your entire lives in New Jersey, and a lot of these places are going to be like pushing you to give them any reason why you would actually consider them more highly than programs in this area. So most places are just going to ask where you rotated, but if you like, you need to be prepared to tell them why you didn't rotate there and why you all of a sudden like them enough to interview there now. And you have to like toe this fine line between like saying like disparaging other places and trying to talk this place up without making it sound like you just made this all up on the spot. And the tough part is that almost every residency program is pretty similar on paper, aside from like whether they do a lot of research and stuff like that. So it can be, especially ahead of time, it can be difficult to prepare for that question.
And yeah. One other thing I also noticed was that, these attendings, you have to remember they have a full-time job. They are running a residency. Not to say that they didn't read your application. I'm sure they've read your application. But when it comes to tell me about yourself, it's an opportunity for you to say something that maybe strikes a commonality with them, and they'll pick up on it. So if you give this little backstory and there's something that you share in common, all of a sudden that's an instant like ability for them to ask you a question, and you can lead into the interview that way, which is a really nice thing to have. And I would suggest, I think the school offers the ability for you guys to work with the deans and sort of, you may not have a time to go through an entire interview, but to sort of tailor up a question or two. And I would say if there's one question to work on with them, that would probably be the one to really nail down and make it as good as you possibly can.
Yeah, you see, it's in red, and each of us like spoke about it. Like this one is important. I mean, and to Paul's point, being prepared. Like again, like look people up and like new like it's a whole thing. Like you got to be ready. Just kind of going down the line. What are your strengths and weaknesses? So, I think the one of the common things people can do is like try to make a strength out to a weakness. Like, oh, I'm really organized. This is my weakness, and so it takes time for like, no, like that's your strength. And you're really organized. That's good. It's again sort of this theme of towing the line of saying something that's not necessarily it's on your anti-resume per se, but it's something that you're working on, and something that maybe it's good in it's good in some scenarios, but it's really something that you wish you could make better, and how you're making it better. Here on the spot, and maybe I'm breaking my rule. So maybe one of my weaknesses, for me, I can sometimes perseverate on decisions or think almost too much. about things that, which I've learned, which and Todd has seen. When I probably first came in, there's some things that you just need to do, and it's not that hard. You need to kind of action is more important than like thinking through every single possibility. I think probably one of the things I've learned is, or I've grown in residencies, like gaining these orthopedic instincts. Like, okay, the fracture is wide open. Like, I don't need to have thought through the plan of how I'm gonna nail this. Set up the table for the like wash it, put in a splint, and like get some stuff done and take care of it. So that's probably one of the things that and again, Todd can speak to probably because he's probably painfully watched me as an intern. He's like thinking about like, Jamar, just do it. Things too much, right? So obviously you want to be thoughtful and think about it. Like, again, like it was something that I struggled with and still do struggle with. So
this is completely news to me.
Yeah, see, so if you don't say something true, right, Todd would call me out. So and then I lose all my credibility. And then your strengths. So again, these are like, people are gonna ask these, and these are like your layups. Like, you can highlight stuff on your resume. You can do the deep parts that you didn't think people looked at. Like, you can this is your chance to bring it all out to light. What sets you apart is kind of like, what's your strength? What makes you different than the ortho bot number 346 who's also applying here, and all 10,000 of you. It can be something. Nothing weird. This is a trap. Don't say like, oh, I just keep this one simple. It doesn't need, maybe nothing really sets you apart that much. Maybe you're giving an answer that some other people have given, and you know what? Maybe you just don't be remembered for like a really odd thing here. What's your favorite research project? So again, this goes back to knowing your application, and being able to talk about it. And I would encourage. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you guys don't, but I have a favorite research. I always think about one or two that I was like, oh, that one was like super cool. Probably my favorite is it was a case series on Mycobacterium immunogenum. Nerd. But the reason it's my favorite is because someone ended up emailing me. A patient emailed me because I was the contact author, and they said that their surgeon had actually read the paper, and they were able to follow the protocol that we set forth in that based on our little case series, and they went back. So essentially, usually, you do an IND and it's over, and you send it for culture. But our protocol is anyone who presents in the way that she presented, you probably should do an IND. You should send it for hold the specimen for longer, and you should do a repeat IND even if the symptoms haven't recurred. And sure enough, they did that, and she said that her surgeon said that without doing that, she wouldn't have gotten better, or she doesn't think they would have found the answer. And I was like, whoa, I did it. That's the point. Like, I influence your care without being there. So that's my favorite research project. And then you have to be able to describe it and all that stuff. And then again, describe research projects. So people are going to talk about this stuff on your resume a lot. And again, these are chip shots for you guys because you're at this interview advice thing, and we're telling you that they're going to do this, and you're ready for it. And then what do you like to do in your free time? So it can be something on your resume. So again, I like playing flag football. If a game is going on, I'll play, but it's not necessarily something I always do. So it can be generic. It doesn't have to be the most. You don't have to say you fly fish like every other whatever people are. I do triathlons, and we've done like 1%. Just keep it real.
And I think for that that one regarding your favorite research project, having gone through this process twice, the first time my research project that I chose was one that I thought was sort of interesting, but it wasn't really related to orthopedics. And I, you mentioned it, and people would be like, okay, that's cool, and then that was it. A lot of people don't have necessarily that really unique. Jomar, you had a very unique experience.
Yeah, honestly. That was awesome, dude. Like, I got that email. That was like I was like, wow.
You gotta say, I don't know how many people have that, but then the second time I picked one that was more related to orthopedics, and it definitely had I noticed something totally different where people could actually talk on it and we could have a conversation about it, as opposed to people just saying like, oh, that's cool, and moving on. So if you do have the opportunity to maybe have like you're between two, definitely pick the one that's related to orthopedics that you think other orthopedic surgeons are going to be able to talk to you about.
Premeditate, guys. Think about it and then do it. Hard questions. So to Todd's point, so what did you like or dislike about other programs? So the way I might answer this is if I'm interviewing currently at program A but I did a rotation at program B, they might ask, okay, well, what did you like about this? I might say I like things that are in common with program A, so that they know that that's the type of program that I'm interested in. If I did in fact like those things, and I might say that I didn't like that they didn't have something that program A has, and maybe value, so they can again serve your if you didn't like it and program A has it, great. And then you can, those may be things that you want to target or talk about the strengths and weaknesses. So again, this is every time you interview, when people were telling me they did like one of my friends said he did like 30 interviews or something. I'm like, dude, how did you possibly prepare? Like, there's no way you could possibly prepare, at least at that level, for all of those interviews. He was one of the first virtual guys, and he was like, great guy and great applicant. So he got a lot of interviews. It's just like, that's nuts to me. But something like that is important. Again, towing that line. Here's an X-ray. So I got this question at UVA, my home program. They showed me a comminuted intertroch, and I had done a lot of intertrochanteric hip fracture, and I'd done a lot of trauma at Pittsburgh, which was one of my rotations, and they did traction internal rotation views, and that's what they wanted me to say. And I was like, oh man, that looks bad. Maybe they should get a traction internal. And they were excited about that. And then the very next X-ray they showed me was like a very simple skiffy. I'd done a slipped capital femoral epiphysis injury of the pediatric proximal femur physis, but I'd done no peds. And so I was like, the best I could say was, it's an AP, go back to your principle. I said, you have an AP and a frog lateral of the hip. And I said, there's something, the hips are asymmetric, and they started to help me through. They're like, does it almost look like it fell off? And then I had heard of slipped cat, and I tried to start saying, and they helped me through. So you're not gonna get it right every time, but again, the idea that having principles, they like that. I was able to describe the X-ray and describe the physes. This is a child. The physes are, even though I hadn't done any peds. And again, it was a chip shot. If you had done peds for 2 days, you would know. I would have known that answer. I just hadn't. But you should be able to describe an X-ray or try to describe an X-ray. So, and then how would you manage that? I don't know. I think that's really hard, and I don't know if getting that right or wrong. I mean, getting it right probably shows that you have some experience, but getting it wrong probably doesn't kill you. And no matter what it is, I don't think. Tell me about a time you were a leader or a team player. So we all have these experiences. At some point in our career, we were on a team. We led a team. Like, you can't become a doctor without that experience. Not that you should be seeking it out, just that it happens. It's like organic. You always have it. I was on a sports team. I was a team captain. I could talk about that for days. I in college, I ran the steer clear, our safe ride, organize. You can just think of your life. They'll pop up. But again, the whole idea is, I haven't thought about those things in a while. And so I wouldn't be able to give you a formulated answer that could spark discussion, but you should be able to do that at the time of the interview. That's like super valuable. And then what makes a great surgeon? So, think about your mentors, think about the things that you really admire, think about the times that, you know, you felt comfortable, you know, in the operating room. Think about the people who, you know, you're like, everything's gonna go okay when you're in the OR. I think probably for me, what makes a great surgeon is someone who's able to stay, you know, like equanimity, like under duress. So like, you know, if everything is going to hell, like this person's, you know, level, they're not just confident, but they're knowledgeable, and they know, you know, their limits and know when they need help. That's probably what makes a great surgeon for me. Someone who wouldn't just kind of go in guns blazing without having thought it through, which, again, remember my weakness. I like to think everything through. So right, I'm biased. I think about things too much, so I'm biased there. But you know, that's what's valuable to me, and I think that can tell you a lot about who you are, and people, you know, like that's the kind of surgeon you probably want to be, right? That's kind of the surgeon I want to be, and so, um, you know, you're going to tell people a lot with a question like that. Tell me about a time you dealt with an ethical dilemma. Again, you know, it'll happen throughout your career. You know, there'll have been some time where, you know, you watch something happen that maybe you didn't necessarily expect to see, or, you know, someone was mistreated in front of you, or someone, you know, said something in a way that, you know, disparaged someone else, and you know, what'd you do? Did you talk to someone? Did you not? Did you, maybe you didn't behave in a way that you felt was acceptable, and you feel bad about it in future. When you come in a situation like that again, you may say, well, this is how I'll deal with it. A difficult experience in your life, you know, we've all had it. I think common and easy things, right? We've all had some sort of loss, or someone's passed away in our life, or that was probably came at an inopportune time in your life, or, you know, something that was simple that, you know, went out of hand, and should have been something easier to handle. But again, these are all just things that, you know, tell me about yourself. To having, again, so this is where Jeff is his name. He, you know, where he spoke about kind of having some, you know, a story that connects a lot of these sorts of questions. You know, one or two or three stories, so you don't have to think about 20 questions. You know, maybe a story that has a challenge that was met by you know, a great team leader, or, you know, you were the team leader, and it was an ethical dilemma that you managed, you know, and it was a difficult experience. You know, something like that can wrap all of those things together. So you don't get bombarded with, you know, those questions all the time, and two, you can sort of answer those questions without being asked them, and then people can, you know, kind of get a more whole picture of you. What is your favorite procedure? So people will ask that. I personally didn't get asked what that is. If I had to answer it now, I'd probably say my favorite exposure is the delto pec, and favorite procedures, or, you know, close second is probably like extended FCR, like distal radius, or probably just because I like can do it. Like attendings, let me do the whole case, so that's very nice for me. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? So again, like, this is not a come up on the spot question. It's more of a premeditated, what are your goals? And so this is a part where it's tempting to say, you know, oh, my goals are this, because you realize that it lines up with, you know, the values of some program that you're really interested in. And again, I implore you or encourage you to think about your goals, and think about, you know, what you want to be. Think about, you know, great surgeons that you've met, or people that you think are great surgeons, or great residents even, and think about, you know, where they are, and say, you know, I'd love to end up, you know, with similar attributes. And then once you have that, think about the program that you're going to, and think about, you know, parts of that program that you're interviewing at, parts of that program that may be in line with those things, and then you can highlight those and talk about them. So you know, because again, people want to know that you've thought about it and that they can, again, people want you to, when you come to a program, they want to know that some people are just going to spend 5 years and get out and do orthopedics however they want to do it, and it'll be completely different from their training. Like, that's just a fact of life. But if you can be thoughtful about it, and we can actually get people who we know we can mold and shape and train, and we're gonna, when all this effort we put in, they're gonna really, really value it, and it's gonna be synergistic to their goals, and it's gonna get them further along faster. That'd be ideal. So recognizing that. What could you do if you couldn't do ortho? Got this question. You can always ask, like, in medicine or not. I think if I wasn't going to do ortho and I was going to still be in medicine, I wanted to do like cardiology. For me, it was about the anatomy of it. I thought that the heart had like really good concrete anatomy. And so that, I don't know, it just made sense in my head. Like, the pathology was all linked to anatomy. And so there was something that was always concrete. Like, I couldn't do like rheumatology, for example, where it's like a lot of hexadecimals. Like, yeah, you're sure you can remember it all, but that's not exciting for me. So that's probably what I would do in medicine, if not ortho. And then what questions you have. So this is under the hard questions, but it should probably be under the common questions. It's like, everyone is good. Sometimes you'll walk into an interview and they'll just say, all right, what do you, I'm really excited about your resume. You look like a stellar applicant. We'd really love to have you here. What questions do you have about, how can we, one person asked me, how can we recruit you? So I was like, stay open. Like, still be an orthopedic program that would like really, really like maybe want to come. But you want to be they thought that was funny. You want to be prepared for this one as well. So again, for someone who's doing 30 plus interviews, I just don't know how you can have thought of, obviously there's some questions that can be, generic, like, what are the strengths of the program? What are the weaknesses? If there's something you could change, what would it be? Is there something that you wish you had? Those are kind of the ways that all different ways to ask the same question. So there are going to be some of those, but in each program you might say, you might be really interested in, they say their biomechanics lab is really, really okay. How much time can you spend there as a resident with the clinical workload that we have? I'm really interested in that. Or, for me, one of the things I guess I'm looking for in fellowship is, I wish we're sort of on the same timeline here, guys. So this is looking through this PowerPoint's helpful reason, but I'm interested in a place that has high fidelity like simulation. So being able to work in a cadaver lab, or to practice for cases, like how often can you do that? What access do we have to that? What are the resources that we have available to us for that kind of high fidelity practice before we go into the OR? Like, that's important. And if they have like no answer for that, then you can say, oh, okay, that's fine, right? If you can only do that once a year. So, okay, I'd really, that's good. I really hope to, take advantage of that one time. And then you can learn, like, this is your chance to interview them. So the tables have turned. But again, whatever they say, oh, okay, that's awesome. it's good. And you have to just be, again, equanimous and very, very positive about however the answers come up. But this is like your chance to hear about the program more than just whatever's written online, and kind of the general vibe check that you're getting from the day. Like, this is your chance to grill them back. I don't know if Paul or Todd, you had any thoughts. I just kind of went through all of those. Anything stuck out to you?
I would say one other thing I did, and I don't know, I only had one in-person interview, but I had numerous virtual ones to experience this with. But a lot of times they're going to give you a handout ahead of time that's going to have all the attendings that are going to interview you, or it'll have the attendings and the residents that are going to interview you. So if you sit down and you just look up the attendings, look where they did where their hometown is, because if you look them up, it's going to have where they live, where they went to residency, where they went to fellowship, and
who their kids are, who they're what.
any of those places overlap, right? And you're talking about, tell me about yourself, or tell me about what you've done. And maybe you went to college at the same place they went to college or something. Expect a follow-up question of, oh, what was your favorite bar? Where did you go out? Or what did you do? Stuff like that. So I definitely think that that's a great opportunity for you to make a connection with someone beyond just the questions. And then when you get these questions, if you don't have a immediate answer, kind of going, it works well with the x-ray, just talking your way through sort of your thought process gives them an opportunity then to work with you and interact with you. Because part of the interview is not just a yes or no, it's how do you interact with the attendings? How do they feel about you? You're working with these people for the next 5 years, and they want to know that they're going to have a good interaction with you. You don't just want someone that's going to come to work. You want someone that you can actually get along with.
Yeah. Probably a good way to think about this whole thing. Like, these questions are just a vehicle to figure, what's your vibe? Like, can we parlay? We're in the OR and it's a stressful time, and you're who are you gonna be? What's gonna happen? Especially in orthopedics, I think it's really valuable to know. Go to the next one. It's really valuable to kind of get this sense of people, because a lot of what we do is, I thought about this the other day. A lot of what we do is elective, and all our attendings have met a lot of the patients in the clinic, and then you go up and you meet them for the first time, and then you're doing surgery on essentially on their patients, like people who trust them a lot, and they have to know, they just really have to know who you are and how you're going to interact with their patient when they come in for follow-up and you're talking to them in the clinic, or when they come in for a problem in the ER and they're not around, not immediately available. Like, who's going to represent us? Who's going to represent the when they're talking to our patients who we have developed this relationship with, and who we allow to learn and operate with. And so it's really, really valuable. So again, the questions are just a vehicle to see kind of who you are and get a quick fight. You can often tell early, less about what they say, or not just about what you say, but kind of how you say it and how you interact. So weird questions.
Can you go back one slide for a second?
Oh yeah, sure.
When I was a med student, I had particular trouble with, tell me about a time you dealt with an ethical dilemma, because as a med student, it's exceptionally rare for you to be able to take moral high ground on something. So like the vast majority of the time, you're just a bystander. And if you can remember it, it's probably because it went the wrong way. So I had a lot of trouble with that. Also, up until that point, the most difficult experience in my life was studying for step 1. And that's a little bit too cliche to use in an interview where everyone else has also done that. So, I'm lucky that I've had a privileged life, but it was kind of a challenging question to answer, because all of the most difficult things I had done were in medical school.
Nice. Which medical school is hard, so like, don't look down on time. I guess thinking back, I guess I had talked about moving to America, which is not in any way unique, but it's a little bit different. People like to hear that you're from an island, and inevitably somebody wants you to the accent. It's always a good jumping off point. But important to think about these things, because right, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an ethical dilemma that I encountered as a medical student. I don't know, it wasn't too bad. So think about it. Be creative. Weird question. So tell me about a time you broke the rules. This may be your ethical dilemma. I never wear a seatbelt on the plane. Sorry. I don't care what the FAA says. That's my rule breaking. And I'll stand by it. If you had to kill someone, I've never heard this. If you had to kill someone, how would you do it? And what would you do with the body?
If anyone's interviewing in Akron, be ready for that one.
Okay. I would silenced what a silenced weapon, like a silenced like pistol, and yeah, kill him somewhere where I wouldn't have to do anything with the body. I guess they could just be
You
found
can
and
you can use that question as your ethical dilemma.
yeah. Yeah. What would your band name be? Um, the Jumpmen, Dr. J's. I don't know. Um, if you're an orthopedic instruments, I got this one. I think when I was at Wake, I said I would be C-arm. I think C-arms like sees all, or it's like all knowing, or it's the deciding factor, or something like weird, or something like that. I said. Maybe it can be like some sort of weird retractor. Maybe I could be like an Alice retractor. And my story with Alice retractor was I thought for a long time, sorry, not a long time, just in this one case where we were using it, it was an ENT case when I was a med student. I thought this, no, sorry, it was a sweetheart retractor. I thought the surgeon was just being really nice to this guy saying sweet. It's like, wow, what an environment. Like, sweetheart, like you guys are also friends, and like, wow, he knows exactly what he needs when he says sweetheart. Ask me that, sweetheart. I was like, wow, okay, I guess we're like good friends. So maybe that could be my favorite. If you could be any cell in the body, which would it be? I never got this question. But maybe an eye retinal cell. You're giving crucial information to the body. I don't know. And or maybe any organ, like maybe that would be like a way they might say, tell me a joke. I had like some like long-winded joke like in the pocket about UVA always losing at football to Virginia Tech, which I could tell you, but it's fine.
You should have both a clean joke and a dirty joke ready to go.
Yeah.
And then read the room.
What's your favorite pickup line? Don't have any pickup lines, I guess. Maybe I should watch them while Wildin' Out. They have like this like funny, like how smooth are you or something. They always do like some corny, cheesy pickup lines. But so let me ask you, and yeah, I don't have any good ones on deck. I guess maybe I should have prepared one and read through all these questions. But the whole point is that you can, when people ask you stuff, you can talk through it. Like these days I only talk to a married woman. That's my wife. She doesn't need pickup line. I don't know, something to like go away from the fact that I have no pickup lines. But maybe I should have one on hand.
That's a huge red flag.
Yes, yeah. Married man doesn't have any pickup lines anymore. Huge red flag right there. I put those days behind me. Other questions. So if you like to cook, or yeah. So based on your hobbies. Someone asked me what book I read. I think probably if the last book I've read I think that time it was like When Breath Becomes Air. Was by the neurosurgeon who ended up having like lung cancer during the residency, and then passed away like in his last.
You should pick a happier book. Jeez.
Last year. Well, I don't know, dude. It's just it's that's like required reading for medical school. Right?
Literally, just pick one of the books you read in high school.
And then probably the last book that I read these days was Genius on the Edge. It's like a biography of William Halsted. It was one of the first surgeons, something. It was by a surgeon out of PNS. I think he wrote the biography. What's your favorite bone? I never got this question. Pick any bone. I just pick any bone, I guess. I don't know. Radius. I think it's really intricate. The anatomy changes from proximal to just, I don't know, have anything. Most longest bone in something. Don't say rib. Never operate on ribs. Who are your heroes? Again, just someone, your parents, like it's such a, it's an easy one. If you don't have anything ready, you don't have any heroes, nobody's ever like made an impression on your life, just, you can say that. Um, that's super easy. What do you want us to, for me, I'd probably pick some, famous athlete. Probably, my favorite athlete, Usain Bolt, lives without limits, exceedingly talented, but hard worker. I've met him, I've seen him, in training, like watched his career. Like he's like, what a talented, but exceptionally like great person. And he's like, from where I'm from, so we have some stuff in common. And then what do you want us to know that's not in your app? So again, this is a chance for you to talk about your strengths, or I'd probably keep it to your strengths in this one, or something that you don't do, or you didn't say on your application. I'm trying to think of in med school if there was something that I didn't do, off the back of my hand right now. I guess I don't. It can be something that you do. Like I go to the sports clinics with Dr. Gad on some Thursdays, which is not, I guess, mandatory, but it's not really volunteering, but it's something that I do, and the sports for does, and it's you wouldn't know that by reading my application, and I can talk about some of the interesting pathology I've learned there, seen there, or kind of the interactions with the athletes at in a different forum, so not on the sideline and not in the OR, but in clinic, which is something that you're going to have to do and something you're going to want. So I might talk about that, or I like give talks to kids sometimes in high school about medicine, and like I said, it's not on my app. I didn't put that there. So, but have something that is a little bit different, but shows that you're deeper than just what's on paper. And that you're you can't learn everything about you by reading like 2 or 3 pages. Like there's more going on than just that, and it doesn't have to be something like profound like that. Maybe it's another hobby, or something that you do with your family, or something. And then probably new thing, why didn't you signal? So this I can't talk about at all. I have no knowledge on the signaling. I don't even, a lot of places aren't going to interview if you don't signal. Some places will, and maybe ask you this question. But this is again a simple, why do you want to? This is just why do you want to come here, or why our program, like in disguise, like Scooby Doo. It's oh, I didn't know it was you. The same thing, and they just want to know, what it is you value about their program, and maybe why if you didn't signal, and they still interviewed you, think about why that happened. Like if you don't signal another New Jersey school, and they still interview you, say you thought that your background was heavy enough in the state that you thought that they may be interested in you for X, Y, or Z reason, and you wanted to make sure. I'm not sure how to navigate that question. I guess I didn't really think about it before, but maybe Paul, you signal and then didn't signal. Can you give us some insight?
I think just about every program that I got an interview at, I ended up signaling, I think. But I would say that if you need to like sit down and you really have to come up with a good answer for this, whether it's the fact that you didn't know about the program till maybe you met someone afterwards, or you were on the interview trail and you talked to someone and like all of a sudden it really sparked your interest, so you looked into the program. But you got to come up with some really good answer, because you get 30 signals. So you had 30 opportunities to signal a program and you chose not to, and they gave you an interview. And so they saw something in your application that they really liked, and you have to have a return on that to say, why are you interested in them, to sort of make that match happen. So I would definitely think long and hard about that question once you know you have an interview at a program that you haven't signaled.
Yeah. Super valuable. And then skills. So in my time, back in my day, when we were doing all pre-COVID, all in-person interviews, I had done, I think my skills were I had to suture like two not two craft singles. I think that was a Todd thing. I had to suture two laps, blue towels together. I had to drill a PVC pipe and then measure it with the while talking to them. I had to put one of them like they made me play Operation while I was like interviewing, which man, this thing is buzzing a lot. These pieces bigger than usual. And then uh I can't remember what else I did in that, skills room, but most of it is just like, again, it's less about like, to that point, I don't know how many of you guys had used a drill in, drill bones and got to use the measuring guide, like measuring tool, sorry. I had the depth gauge, sorry. I hadn't done either on any of my rotations. And it was less about necessarily doing it perfectly correctly and probably more about one, you have seen it, so maybe you like I'm not holding the drill backwards. I knew to brace my hand because I've seen everyone else do it, and you knew the direction to pull the depth, and more. And even if you're not doing it perfectly well, you still kept conversation and still kept going with the because they were just actively asking me. There were three. I remember three people. One was watching the time, one was asking me questions, and one of them was just looking just straight at what I did. Was the trauma attending actually was looking like straight at what I was doing. Like, this guy how's he gonna drill when I'm trying to talk to him? And it was of course a trauma attendings love like talking to you, but then telling you like keep doing things that require a lot of focus, but talk to me at the same time. So yeah, it makes sense that they were doing that. So I don't know what there's probably no chance they can do a tactile, type of thing in a virtual interview. There's just no way to really, it'd be too low fidelity and too finicky. So I don't think they would do that virtually. And I think I heard of like, one or two people getting hurt during these things. I think the year before me, a guy who, or not, 3 years before me, a guy who was interviewing at UVA, who he ended up being a resident there. They had to do something like a champagne bottle, and he like almost lost his eye, like his eye pretty good with the cork, and like they were like, all right, we gotta match this guy. Maybe like hurt him on our thing. So don't hurt yourself on purpose, but something happens. You never know. And then correspondence. So I think that this one is, a lot of pretty much everywhere I went said, don't send us. We adhere to the match. Like, we don't want to hear about it. We don't want to hear, we don't want to need a letter or something. My major takeaway from this thing is, like, if you're gonna send someone something, like it has to be like immediately. Todd knows, and even when I was on the admissions committee at UVA for the med school, and we interviewed on Wednesday, and we had a decision by Friday, which is longer than most residency programs because they usually interview you and like they have like the day of they decide like who's where on their list, and sometimes they have 2 interview days, and so they'll make their prelim list, and then by the second interview they make their finalist. And so if it's a place that has 1 interview day, like I mean, my hot take is you may even want to come, ask people to call for you like beforehand, like put you on their radar, and make sure that they're really thinking about you on the day of. You're not just, or again, orthobot number XYZ, like you're, number 346. You're, this person who someone says that you really are, really interested in their program, and they're gonna like look at you and take it, the things you say seriously. So that's my hot take. That's unvetted and use at your own risk. So, but yeah, you don't want to be saying a bunch of places are your number one, I guess. but we've all heard the story about people who said that they were places were their number one, and then they didn't go there. And I guess people remember that, but the flip way also happens, and there's no like retribution either way. So like live with that's your ethical dilemma. You can live with that, how you live with it. That's also a hot take. And then the next time we'll talk is in February. So we'll talk again about sort of match rank lists. We'll probably maybe try and take it like mid-February before the rank lists are finally due. But when people have, are done interviewing, and we'll talk about, how we're, what you should think about, what impressed you, what stood out, leading up to that, pardon me, I would encourage you all, which is something I probably should put on this, is for you, it's not just important that, you're answering these questions and all that, but, during the day, and very early on in the day, you'll get sort of, a feeling or a vibe, or just, programs will very quickly or not pass your baseline vibe, your vibe check. And soon after, just like they are, meeting in their, secret room and ranking you right afterwards, like you should probably also, have your own, kind of heart to heart introspectively and write things down, because places start to look the same. And they all start to come together in your memory, and then you're just kind of going on like, this hazy feeling that you maybe had about a certain place, and it becomes very difficult to remember all of the things that you could have had. Some of the dominant memories will stand out, and you'll remember like 2 or 3 like things that may or may not even be the defining parts of a program, but you'll remember them, and that's all you'll have to go on. So if you write things down, I would encourage you maybe not to write things down immediately, like in the like when you're at the interview, like really focus on doing well that day, but then immediately after, like think about the interviews, think about the way they presented the program, think about the interactions, think about just everything you saw, and put it down on paper, and then if, for me, I'm a spreadsheet guy, so columns and rows, and kind of you can come up with your scoring system or your point system, and give it a score on your spreadsheet, and the way I think you'll know, oh, how will I decide? You'll know, like one of my friends, a year after me, same guy, like really good applicant, he said, oh, I can't choose between here and here. And I gave him all the pros of one place, and he was like, yeah, but this other place is like, you didn't talk about these pros. And I was like, all right, well, you kind of know, it sounds like. So it's something, a spreadsheet like that can help you kind of for the rest of places, but kind of your top places that you like. You're kind of just gonna, your places you're gonna like no matter what. They're places you're gonna not like no matter what, and they're places that are gonna be in the middle that you can be swayed either which way. So yeah.
I agree. Do the spreadsheet, design it ahead of time, fill it in on each program the same day as your interview. Don't let those details slip your minds by waiting till you're doing your rank list.
Yep. And I would also say, like, each one of these opportunities that you have as an interview is something that you're going into to really give it your best shot. You want to give it 100%. But it's also a learning opportunity, because you're going to have more interviews. So treat every single one as if it is the only one that you have. But afterwards, sit down, take 10 minutes and think to yourself, what is the question that I didn't answer well? What is something that I maybe never heard before? Write that question down, come up with a really good answer to it. Odds are you're probably going to get it again. Or think about maybe something that you don't think went exactly how you wanted it to, and how you can improve, because each one, and you're just going to build upon it. And then, you're going to make every single interview get better and better.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. And in conclusion, be yourself. I think, again, it's like, we've been talking for like an hour and a half almost. Like, it's so, like, this whole process, so it can be so challenging, and you already are under a lot of pressure, and you already are under a lot of stress. Like, it's a lot easier, I think, at least, to just like do what you know, which is yourself, and be what you know, which is yourself, and then trying to like create a persona, because that's much more challenging to keep up. Know your application, which, you know, be yourself, and knowing your application, dress the part. So you shouldn't be wearing like, you know, flannel pajamas. You should be wearing like a tie and suit, and or or a pantsuit. Probably no tie if you're a girl, or a skirt suit. I'm sorry, Christina, I don't know what girls wear. And wear the full outfit, even if you're at home. Shoes optional, and then like be prepared. Like really think about, you know, all the just really think about everything that we said, and then some of the new things that you're going to see, like, you know, write them down like Paul says, and think about them afterwards. And that's your best opportunity to make sure you don't get hit with it again. And yeah.
And like I don't know how many of you guys may have played sports growing up, but this is essentially the equivalent of like your game day. You know, like you've worked 4 years of college for this. Maybe you took a year off. You worked 4 years in medical school. Like now is your time to shine. You have 4 hours maybe, or 3 hours during an interview to lay it all out and to just sell yourself for this program and show them exactly who you're about, and for them to also show you what they're about. You know, take that opportunity and just realize that you've reached it. You earned that interview, and show them why they should want you, and, you know, why you want them.
Hi guys, I had a question about socials. So, you know, what would you recommend? Should we drink? Should we just drink one? What were your experiences?
Yeah, I guess on the trail, I just had like at most like one or two. I just did whatever people were doing. I had some of the, you know, invariable charcuterie board. I like held one or two in my hand, usually. But it all depended on the feeling of the social. So if I remember correctly, so you know, I interviewed at Vanderbilt. Their social beforehand was, you know, kind of a dressed up social with all the attendings and residents and all that stuff. And then afterwards, they had something where, you know, the residents, sorry, just like took us out on a town in Nashville, Tennessee, and they were like going at it. Now I wouldn't I wouldn't go for it, you know, like that, but you know, I didn't just have one that evening, so you know, I had a good time.
Definitely show up, even if they're virtual socials. Show up. Do not skip them, even if they say they may be mandatory. Optional. Of course, if you have another interview, you know, do the other interview. But if you're doing nothing the night before, you really should be showing up for those socials. It shows more interest.
Yeah.
And yeah, as far as drinking, I would just read the room, and if you're gonna drink, then don't drive yourself, obviously.
No limits.
And if you're someone who gets really weird when they have a bunch of drinks, then don't do that.
I'll ask another. Can you guys remember like specific awkward moments from the trail that you might, you know, that you were able to deal with and think back about sometimes that we can avoid?
Yeah, one of the interviewers asked me what my parents do, and then how much money they make, what kind of car my dad drives. And then I told him he drives a Mazda, and he goes, huh. So I didn't match there.
I got a similar question, actually, minus the car.
Apparently, that same interviewer has been known to have interviewees call their parents during the interview.
Oh, okay, weird. Never had that. I guess I didn't interview there. Whatever that is. Really awkward. And they probably all come during the questioning of your the questioning, you know, when you're getting questioned. I'm trying to think of, you know, particularly awkward moments. Like maybe I blacked them all out. I think probably one was they asked me like, you know, so at UVA in Charlottesville in particular, probably not predominantly like a minority community. And they were like, so how do you think that, being a minority in that environment changes the way that you may interact with your patients here versus there? I was like, I don't know that it would change anything. And I guess that wasn't probably the answer they were looking for. And they kind of kept going. I was like, I just kind of rolled with it, and then the interview was over, whenever it was finished. But I thought that was like strange and off topic, and not I wasn't going to give any like valuable information. I didn't know how to answer that question or where they were going.
I definitely encountered a lot of awkward silences. So, there were multiple occasions where I would be in like a 20-minute interview room, and 3 minutes in, the interviewer would say, all right, well, what questions do you have? I'm like, you are aware that we have 17 minutes left, right? So that might be the single most important question to think about ahead of time, is having a number of questions that you can ask to fill the time. And I would try to avoid having them be questions that you could have answered by reading their website. So some questions I like to ask were, are there any specific changes you envision in the next 5 years? What are some things that you think are particular strong suits of your program, etc.? So things that you could ask anyone that you would not be able to gain from reading their website or their pamphlet.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say that's huge. Like I had a number of rooms where the conversation would end early, or they would just open the room and say, what questions do you have for us? And you don't want to just have radio silence. Like you actually have to come up with some questions. So sometimes even if you look at the attendings and you notice that a lot of them came from the same, like they came from that residency.
Yeah. What kept you here?
Like, oh, I noticed a lot of your attendings, like a lot of the teaching attendings come from this residency. Why do you think that is? Like what continues to attract you to come back here even after fellowship?
I just really like Bumblefuck, Idaho. Idaho.
Can you say that? I want to put that into Google Maps. I just need to know where that program is. Yeah, so those are some awkward. You just get some weird questions, or you'll get that. Do you have questions? So, like I said before, like that one should be on the common questions, and it probably should be like the second one in line because you get that, and now you're interviewing, and you got 20 minutes, 10 minutes, like to do something with it. I definitely like the why do people keep coming here, or what about, what are you guys all, or you might even ask, if you see a lot of people there, do you think that affects the variety of training or X, Y, something that gets them to talk, because then they'll want to like say, oh well, no, actually at this program, they trained at all these different fellowships, they bring a lot of perspectives to our blah blah blah. So you can ask personal questions about them, why did you come back here, where you're from far away, like what brought you here, like why this and then now you can use the same questions on them, get them to talk about who they are.
Or even asking, I think one of them was like, why do you like to, why do you choose to work in academics, or what is something that you really value about teaching residents? Because it also tells you, like, remember, you're learning from these people. They are training you for the job you are going to have for the rest of your life. So it's nice to know also, like, what is their motivation? Why do they want to do this? And what do they impart to their residents when they do it?
One thing, Jomar, that you mentioned specifically was like, would this be a resident that would be comfortable talking to your patients in the emergency department? And I thought that was kind of like a good tangible thing that, we can offer to programs. Is there anything else specific that you can kind of come up with that we can share that we would be able to offer to the program? Because I know kind of it might seem always the other way around. It's like, oh, what can the program offer us? But kind of what specific things would you feel would be good for us to express we can offer?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and that's hard, right? Because early, like you're not like good at surgery, right? So like you're not valuable in that way. I think that probably some of the things that you can offer to the program are things that you can't necessarily teach. So showing when you show up on time for the interview and you're polite to everyone and you have a positive demeanor, that shows that you're a person who one is probably going to bring those values to the program. And I think that people like to know that probably the thing that you can bring the most is like being trustworthy. Hard to show that necessarily on an interview, but again, if you're not being dishonest about your motives and you're being real about who you are, then people know that, okay, this is someone who's going to keep it straight with me, and when a patient has a problem, they're not going to try to hide it from me, and they're not afraid to say that they don't know, and they're not afraid to recognize their limits and shortcomings, and they can bring that to a team. So I think those are probably those values or characteristics are things that you can bring that are useful in a lot of scenarios. Probably another thing is if there's some way that you can, again, if you're someone who works well in teams, if you can highlight that in some way, whether it's written in your application or talking about team experiences that you've had, I think that those are very are very valuable things, because you're going to be interacting and being on different teams. Showing that you're not going to be a headache is really really good, because if yeah, which you do by showing all those things as I mentioned previously.
I gotta log off. Let me know if you guys have any specific questions. Otherwise, Jomar will send out the slides after.
Thank you guys for helping us through this. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt. You know how to reach us if you ever have any questions, or if you have more questions now, you can always ask.
Thank you guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, if you guys have any
Thank you.
questions, more than happy to answer anything, since I just went through it last year. So
Thank you.
All right.
nice talk, Jomar.